So, welcome back guys to another video, and I thought this would be an interesting video to do this week because since I started my channel and since I, started my Facebook and everything and talked about my love of retro games, I've always had the question of what are my holy grails. And I don't like to use the term holy grail, to be honest, but it's the best way to describe it because there's just this collection of games that every collector wishes they had in their collection. They're always on the hunt for. And I will say this, I've kind of disciplined myself with retro collecting because, it is a beast within itself. And one of the things that I've always done is I've always tried to search for games out in the wild. I don't do a whole lot of online shopping when it comes to retro games unless I find like a stupid deal on eBay or something like that. I usually just have my patience and just try to go out in the wild and find it, and I think that's where the fun is. It's fun going into a thrift store or flea market or mom and pop shop, what have you, and find these games like a diamond in the rough and finding a good deal and purchasing them. I think that's what's really fun, and that's what's made me really enjoy the hobby of collecting video games. Now, let's see, let's start with some of my holy grails. One of them might surprise you guys, but it's actually Nights in the Dreams on the Sega Saturn. That's right, it was a packing game for the Sega Saturn, but I never had a chance to actually own it. And it's such a unique title, it's such a unique platformer, fantasy adventure, and at the time it made us feel like we were like roaming in this 3D world, but it was actually on rails. But just the art style was just really awesome. And I love the Night series. I wish Sega would do a lot more with that IP. I mean, I know we've gotten a sequel on the Wii, and if by some chance you haven't played Nights in the Dreams, you can get an HD remake of it on Xbox Live and I believe PSN as well, and they're pretty good remakes. They really cleaned it up and it looks really nice. So Nights in the Dreams is actually going up in price a lot too, especially if it's included with the 3D controller. So yeah, and the thing is, a lot of Sega Saturn games, I want to get them complete. I don't want to get them loose. So it's just always a chase for Nights in the Dreams. My next one would be Sunset Riders on the Super Nintendo. Now, what happens when you get the badassery of Contra and John Wayne? You get an awesome side-scrolling Western shooter, and man, this is such a fantastic game. I enjoy it so much. It is a lot like Contra, but has that cowboy feel to it. It's a great co-op game. I've had so much fun playing it. I've played it at my friend's house. I've played it through emulation. I've played the arcade. I've even played the Sega Genesis version. But the Super Nintendo version just has something special, and I really love that version. I know it's one of the more uncommon, I don't want to say rare, but one of the uncommon games that a lot of people are spending a lot of money for. And I know I could, easily buy it on eBay, but the thing is, I would just love to find it in the wild. It would just be freaking awesome. And the next two I want to talk about is kind of surprising. With retro consoles, I have pretty much every retro console I've wanted. I'm pretty much done collecting consoles. The only console I don't have that I really want is a TurboGrafx 16. I'm a very late bloomer with the TurboGrafx 16. When I was growing up during that era, I never even heard of it. I think a lot of people hadn't heard of it, and it's because Nintendo and Sega were just dominating the 16-bit market and what was left of the 8-bit market, especially with the original Nintendo. So, watching YouTube videos and reading Tips and Tricks magazine, I started learning more about the TurboGrafx, and I started becoming very intrigued. It's almost, this console's kind of like loomed me over the years, and it's got so many unique titles on it. I mean, from Legendary Axe to Air Zonk to Ninja Spirit, man, it's just got so many great games, and it's got its own little style that makes it different from the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. And I have to say, I really love the look of the PC Engine. I think the PC Engine is one of the most sleek looking consoles. It's so simple and so fun looking. But if I had to choose, I would of course want to get the Turbo Duo. I think that's just a sexy freaking console. It's so sleek and so awesome. It looks great. And you know, if I was to collect, that would probably be the console I would want to start with the collection, because you know, TurboGrafx is very expensive, especially PC Engine stuff. When you start getting into the imports, it starts getting like a pretty penny. So I don't know, maybe later on down the road I'll start collecting TurboGrafx and PC Engine stuff, but for now I just had to stick to Virtual Console and emulation. Another thing I would love to have, and this is a pipe dream right here, I've always wanted to own my own arcade cabinet, and not just any arcade cabinet. I would love to have a Neo Geo 4-slot arcade cabinet. I would just love that. I love the Neo Geo. So many great fighting games on it. So many great. I even like baseball stars. SNK was a great sports game, and you know, I think it would be a really nice arcade cabinet to have, because you know, you wouldn't have to worry about boards because the games came on cartridge, so you can just swap them out. That's what made the Neo Geo so unique at that time. And I know I could get a MVS consoleized. It's kind of a little expensive, but actually the MVS carts are a lot cheaper than the Neo Geo AES carts, and they're identical. The only thing you have to worry about with the arcade carts are bootlegs. There are a lot of bootlegs out there, so you have to be kind of careful with that. But you know, if you're wanting to collect from the Neo Geo, I would definitely say get a MVS consoleized console and get the arcade carts. They don't look as pretty, but they're just as great. And the last Holy Grail in my collection I would love to have, this is like my #1 Holy Grail, is Castlevania Dracula X on the Super Nintendo. Now, why do I want this game? Because I have every US release Castlevania other than Dracula X, and to tell you the truth, it's not my favorite Castlevania. I'm more of a fan of Rondo of Blood, but it's such a good game. It's so awesome, and I've played it on the Wii U Virtual Console. I've played it through emulation. I've never actually played it on the Super Nintendo ever. I've seen it out in the wild, but they're still asking, you know, some of these flea markets that are kind of like resellers, you know, they have the business there, they're asking for like $180, $200 plus for it. So hopefully one day I will catch someone slipping and I'll go to some like grandmother's house and she's like, yes, my grandson had some Nintendo games, and you know, there would be like Castlevania Dracula X just chilling with freaking NBA Jam or something. That would just be fantastic. I would love that. But you know, I could always import it. The import of Dracula X is actually a lot cheaper, and it's easy to mod a Super Nintendo to play Super Famicom games. But I want to have the US release just to complete that collection. Having every Castlevania that was released for the US, that would be great. But anyway, guys, what are some of your favorite games that you would love to own? What are some of your holy grails of collecting? I'd love to hear from you guys. Leave a comment below. And as always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and as always, happy gaming. Can't get enough of Excess Gaming Podcast? Be sure to check out the audio podcast on Podomatic.com, or you can also subscribe to us on iTunes. Also, if you have a YouTube channel or podcast you like to share, be sure to check out the Excess Gaming Podcast Facebook group page and join our community. All the links are below, and as always, guys, thank you so much for all your support.